Hey, welcome to Spectral Echoes, a collection of Reddit stories as told by people high as a kite. But it's Reddit, who knows, right? If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories. Now, let's get started.
Mysteries at school. The sound of my own voice.
I don't know if anyone else has experienced that feeling when you're doing something utterly familiar, something you've done 100 times before, but suddenly, for just a brief moment, everything shifts slightly. No one tells you anything, no one confirms that you're imagining it, yet the sensation keeps repeating, and then gradually, you're no longer sure what's normal anymore. This feeling started when I was in 11th grade, during my time in the school's public speaking club. My school wasn't large, a public high school with yellow walls, green doors, and long corridors that often echoed with the sound of students' shoes. Our club wasn't crowded. It was mostly made up of kids who liked to talk a lot, or who dreamed of winning some debate competition. Practices were held every Tuesday afternoon after school. Since the school didn't lend out large rooms, we usually practiced in an empty classroom on the second floor at the very end of the hallway, a place no one passed by at that hour. The room was a bit old, with desks and chairs pushed close together, a dusty whiteboard, and a small mirror temporarily propped by the window for members to practice their speeches in front of. I used to really like that mirror corner. When no one else was around, I'd stand there alone, murmuring my speech repeatedly, adjusting my intonation, expressions, every breath. I practiced the sample passage the teacher gave us almost by heart, to the point where I could recite it fluently without even thinking. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I stayed late because the rest of my group had left early for tutoring. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusted my collar, and began to repeat my familiar speech. I recited a section, paused to consider how to express the emotion in the next part. The moment I stopped mid-sentence, something that made my hair stand on end happened. My own voice clearly and distinctly uttered the next segment, even though I hadn't opened my mouth. I stood frozen, my mouth still closed, my eyes fixed on the mirror. That voice was mine. Not just similar, but identical. The rhythm, the tone, even the way I would subtly emphasize the end of a sentence, it was all the same. But I hadn't said a word. I spun around, looking everywhere. The room was empty, the window slightly ajar, no one in the hallway, no speakers turned on. I couldn't explain it. I considered the possibility that someone had recorded it and played it to scare me, but that specific sentence wasn't something I had ever recorded, and most importantly, the sound was too close. It didn't echo from somewhere far away, but as if there was another me standing right behind my shoulder, speaking. I remained silent that day, hastily packed my things, and went home, my heart still pounding. In the following days, I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe I had mumbled it in my head and imagined it aloud, or perhaps my mind was stressed from all the schoolwork. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I wasn't sleepwalking, nor was I dozing off, and what I heard was clearly a real voice, not my imagination. The next week, I stayed alone again, this time more cautiously. I stood in front of the mirror, practiced speaking as usual, but made sure not to stop mid-sentence. I felt a little reassured. But only a little, because when I inadvertently paused for a breath between two sentences, I heard it pick up right where I left off. Not loud, not rushed, but steady, as if finishing what I hadn't had time to say. I spun around again. The room was still empty. I walked out into the hallway, looked both ways, no one. I stood there for a long time, as if I could catch something scurrying away if I was fast enough, but there was nothing. I started to change. I stopped practicing there. When the group met, I told them I wanted to switch to the schoolyard or the multi-purpose room, claiming the old room's lighting was too dim. Luckily, everyone agreed. But things didn't stop there. One rainy afternoon, I had to go back to that second-floor room to retrieve something I'd forgotten the day before. When I opened the door, everything was as it had been, but for some reason, a shiver ran down my spine. The room still had that musty smell, but this time, I also caught the scent of old paper and perfume. A light, sweet scent that I couldn't recall anyone in our group ever wearing. I stepped inside looking for my things. As I bent down to rummage through the last desk drawer, I heard a very faint sound, like soft breathing, indistinct but enough to make me pause. I stood up, turned around, and at that exact moment, the small mirror propped precariously by the window fell to the floor. I swear it had been placed very securely before. As I bent down to pick up the mirror, I saw something I'll never forget. For an instant, as the mirror's surface reflected a corner of the classroom ceiling, I saw a partial dark shadow dart across the ceiling beam. But when I looked up directly, there was nothing. I threw the mirror away, ran out of the room, and never went back. Strangely, after that, I stopped hearing my own voice, and no one ever mentioned that classroom again. It's still there, sometimes locked, sometimes empty. But occasionally, when I walk past, I glance inside. And sometimes, I feel that my reflection in the room's window seems a bit slower than normal. I haven't told this story to anyone. Not because I'm afraid they won't believe me, but because I don't want to confirm that it actually happened. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was fatigue, auditory hallucinations, or even a false memory syndrome I read about somewhere. But whatever it was, I no longer practice speaking alone in enclosed rooms. And every time I pause mid-sentence, even if only in my head, I still hold my breath and wait to see if something else will continue for me.
The stranger in the yearbook photo.
I'm not sure why that incident still lingers in my mind. It's not exactly fear, as nothing truly terrifying happened. But it's like a wrong note in a song you know by heart. Just one misplaced beat can taint the entire melody. Perhaps you'll think I'm overthinking, or that my class was overly superstitious. But I will tell the story exactly as it unfolded, without embellishment, without explanation. And you can decide for yourself what it was about a blurry face in a photo that could haunt so many of us. It was my senior year of high school, so we had our yearbook photos taken. When the yearbooks finally arrived, everyone was thrilled. It was a hardbound, beautifully colored book, summarizing nearly 3 years of our shared experiences. My class, 12A1, wasn't the brightest in the school, but our students were consistently good, united, and most importantly, we had accumulated a wealth of memories. From camping trips and cultural performances to water fights during year-end cleanups, everything was meticulously recorded and organized month by month. I remember us gathering in our old classroom, flipping through each page together, pointing at candid shots, teasing each other about bad hair, awkward poses, or eyes looking away from the camera. The atmosphere was joyful, laughter echoing through a corner of the hallway. It wasn't until we reached the class photo page. The photo was taken in the traditional style, the entire class arranged in 3 rows, sitting, standing, and standing on chairs, with the classroom blackboard behind us, marked with white chalk. Everyone wore our white school uniforms, and every face was radiant. I recall standing in the middle row, near the right edge, my hands in my pockets, trying to look cool, which now, looking back, just seems forced. At first, no one noticed anything, until one of my friends suddenly nudged the person next to them and said, "Hey, look at the right corner. The person standing behind the blackboard. Who is that?" All eyes zeroed in on that corner of the photo. Behind the blackboard, where no one should have been, as the board was angled to completely obscure what was behind it, a partial figure was peeking out. It was only the upper half of a body, from the chest up, and somewhat obscured. The person was wearing a white shirt, similar to our uniform, but the color was slightly off. Not pure white, but a grayish tint, like it had been soaked in lime water for too long. Black hair, with bangs covering the forehead. The face wasn't clear, but enough to discern a vacant expression. What chilled me to the bone was that the person wasn't looking at the camera. Their eyes were cast downwards, as if they were being forced to stand there. Not unwilling, but not actively participating either. Do you know that feeling of discovering a strange detail in an old photo? Like seeing an extra hand that doesn't belong to anyone. That's the feeling we experienced then. No one screamed, no one banged on the desks, only a profound silence spread through the classroom, as if we all realized that something was wrong. Our homeroom teacher initially thought it was a printing error. She was quite relaxed, took my copy, flipped to the page, and asked if anyone had the digital file. We sent her the PDF. When she opened it, the entire class held its breath. That face, it was still there, clearly visible. It couldn't be blamed on the printer. In fact, that same figure had appeared in previous test prints as well. The photography team for our class was a group of freelance student photographers. They assured us they didn't use Photoshop to add people, and they hadn't altered the original photos in any way. And the original photos? They sent them back, and in them, the person was still standing there. I started to feel uneasy. We checked the class roster. All 25 students were accounted for. No one was absent on photo day. But also, no one was that person. No one recognized that face. No one remembered anyone standing behind the blackboard, nor anyone passing by during the shoot. A few students joked that it must have been a lost student from another class. Another friend said, "I remember seeing this person walk through the schoolyard a few times, but they weren't in our class." That comment seemed to weigh down the atmosphere in the classroom even more. For the next few days, everyone avoided the yearbook. Some used correction fluid to blur out that face, others used tape to cover it. I used a sticker, but even after sticking it on, I still felt a creepy sensation. A week later, at a small class gathering at a friend's house, someone mentioned having seen a stranger walking around the schoolyard in the late afternoon, after classes had ended. At first, they thought it was a parent or a visitor, but the security guard insisted no unauthorized person had entered the school premises outside of hours. Another friend, who studied humanities, even mentioned a rumor from a previous year. In the old building block, there was a classroom that had been locked due to a student encountering something strange inside, but it was just a rumor, unconfirmed by anyone. I'm not superstitious. But there are things I can't explain, like how every printed copy of the class photo had that face. Or how no one recognized that person on the day of the photo shoot. Or the feeling that, despite being blurry, those eyes seem to be looking straight at you, through every layer of paper, every PDF. As time went on, I opened the yearbook less and less. I put it in a cabinet, beneath some old books. But many nights, lying alone, I would still visualize those eyes, unclear, indistinct, but persistently appearing. It was as if that person didn't come to be seen, but to exist. Silently. As if he had to be in that photo. A few months after graduation, I once visited the school again. I just happened to be passing by, saw the gate open, so I went in to revisit. The school, when devoid of students, was eerily silent. The building block where my class used to be was repainted now. Some windows were new, blackboards replaced with whiteboards. But the classroom from the photo shoot was still untouched. I stood at the classroom door, not entering. Looking at the blackboard, I replayed the exact position from the photo shoot. The blackboard that day had been angled as a backdrop, with an empty space behind it. Today, behind it was just a bare wall. I don't know why I did it, but I opened my phone camera, held it up as if taking a picture. I didn't actually take one, just looked through the lens. And in an incredibly brief moment, I thought I saw a shadowy figure flash across the frame very quickly. I'm not sure, it could have been the light, or my hand shaking. But my heart pounded, and I immediately left the school. From that day on, I never went back. Now, I'm working, and life is stable. No one mentions that incident anymore, but the yearbook is still in my cabinet. I've never thrown it away, it's just, every time I clean my room, when I accidentally see it, I avoid looking at the class photo page. Because I'm afraid, not of the person in the photo, but afraid that one day, I'll open it again, and find, that person is no longer in the same spot.
The class without a teacher.
I'm no longer sure if what I remember is the truth, or if it's just blank spaces my mind filled in to avoid panic. This happened around midwinter, when I was in 11th grade. My class wasn't special, except for the unusual number of students who kept losing small items, rulers, pens, notebooks, sometimes an eraser or a USB drive. At the beginning of the school year, the homeroom teacher had reminded us several times, but it didn't improve. So, the school decided to install security cameras in some classrooms, including mine. The cameras weren't modern. They were the kind mounted in the corner of the ceiling, capturing blurry images and poor audio, with data stored for a week before automatically overwriting. At first, everyone found it annoying as it recorded throughout class hours, but eventually, we got used to it. Everything proceeded normally until one Monday morning, when my history teacher discovered her USB drive was missing. She was very meticulous and careful, so she insisted she had left it in her teacher's desk drawer during the previous period, a period she had also taught my class. She went to the supervisor's office to request reviewing the video footage. Initially, I didn't pay much attention. I hadn't stolen anything, nor had I really focused during that history class, as I honestly couldn't recall anything specific. I vaguely remembered that the class felt a bit tiring and sluggish, my head felt thick. But when the teacher called the entire class to the supervisor's office to watch the video together, that's when things started to feel strange. In the video, my class, all 25 students, were sitting neatly in their seats. No one was standing, no one was fidgeting. All eyes were fixed in the same direction, the teacher's podium. This would seem normal if there had been someone standing there lecturing. But in the video, the podium was empty, there was no teacher, no one at all. And the strange thing was, the entire class remained perfectly still as if mesmerized, eyes wide open, heads tilted up, hands resting motionless on their desks for over 20 minutes. No one took out their phone, no one took notes, no one turned to each other, everyone just stared intently at an invisible point. A few students started to snicker, thinking it was a camera malfunction or some kind of edited prank. But the video was the original, with full date and time stamps, unedited, uncut. More importantly, that day, according to the schedule and the class logbook, there was no history lesson. The teacher was sick that day. My class had no scheduled class at all. The teacher watched the video 2 more times, hands clasped tightly, saying nothing. Afterwards, she asked the supervisor to delete the tape. She offered no explanation, simply saying, "Perhaps the camera malfunctioned that day. You can all return to class now." No one brought up the subject again, not even in class. We returned to our old study rhythm as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't forget it. I've asked myself dozens of times, why could my entire class, including myself, sit motionless, without speaking, without moving, without reacting at all for almost half an hour? If no one was standing on the podium, what were we looking at? And if someone, or something, was standing there that day, why did only the camera fail to see it? There's one thing I haven't told anyone. After that day, I had a dream where I was sitting in that classroom. In the dream, I knew very well that I couldn't turn my head away. I was sitting at the 3rd desk, near the window, and directly in front of me, at the podium, something was standing. I couldn't clearly see its face. I didn't dare to look closely. But I had a clear feeling that it wasn't human. It just stood there, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. No one in the class moved, no one spoke. Everyone was as if bound by a thick, oppressive air. I woke up at 3 a.m., my heart pounding, my throat dry. I tried to reassure myself, it was just a dream. But after that, every time I passed by the classroom in the late afternoon, when the schoolyard was empty, I would get the feeling that someone was looking out from inside the classroom. The window glass was opaque, the curtains half-drawn, no one inside, but I always felt a gaze following me from the podium. Sometimes I wanted to ask my classmates if anyone remembered anything about that class. But the way their eyes darted away, filled with anxiety, whenever the camera incident was mentioned, made me realize they also felt something was off. And they didn't want to remember either. Perhaps the history teacher was right to ask for the video to be deleted. Perhaps some things shouldn't be kept, shouldn't be replayed, and certainly shouldn't be tried to understand. But even now, I can't stop myself from thinking, if at that moment I, or someone, had stood up and walked towards the podium, what would we have seen? And more importantly, would that thing have seen us?
The passageway behind the classroom whiteboard.
I always thought school was the safest place, a space framed in time, where everything had rules, rhythm, and order. It was where I spent most of my childhood and adolescence, a place where I believed every strange occurrence could be explained by science or simple logic. But there's one thing that, even now, many years later, I still can't explain, and it began in the most seemingly simple, familiar place, the whiteboard on the classroom stage. I attended a long-standing public high school, built in the 1980s. The main building had been renovated, given a more modern facelift, but the back block of classrooms, where my class spent our memorable 12th year, retained its old, classic architecture. The ceilings were high, the plastered walls peeling in large patches, revealing the gray concrete beneath. The old, light gray tiled floor was stained and mottled with time, bearing the marks of countless generations of students. The wooden-framed windows, whenever a strong wind blew, especially on rainy, stormy afternoons, would often emit eerie creaking sounds, like the tired sighs of some giant, unseen creature. The whiteboard in our classroom was a large one, almost filling the entire wall behind the teacher's podium. It was mounted on a sturdy iron frame, allowing it to be adjusted up and down with ease. Normally, teachers would only slide it vertically to write or erase lessons. But one time, during my turn for class cleanup duty, I accidentally discovered something peculiar. This whiteboard could also slide horizontally. At that moment, I was wiping the board as usual, my hand pushing the eraser slightly to the right. Suddenly, the entire heavy whiteboard slid horizontally with surprising ease, revealing a space behind it. It wasn't loose or broken, it was clearly designed to slide, like a hidden sliding door. Behind the board wasn't a solid wall as I had always assumed, but a pitch-black void. I vividly remember that moment. A chilling sensation ran down my spine. I had imagined that behind the board would be dry cement, or at most a small technical gap for wiring. But no, it was a deep, dark space, like a bottomless pit. As I leaned down to look closer, the faint light from the window was barely enough for me to make out a small, old wooden staircase leading straight down into the darkness. No light penetrated there, no breeze wafted out. Only a distinct, indescribable smell, the scent of old, damp paper mixed with long-decayed wood. The feeling was as if I had just opened the lid of a box forgotten for decades, a box containing secrets buried by time. I didn't dare to crawl in. I've never been the type of brave character in horror movies who approaches strange noises in the dark instead of running away. My instinct told me that place was not safe. But I couldn't stop myself from going back many times afterward. Curiosity, mixed with a touch of fear, kept urging me on. Every afternoon, after classes dismissed and the schoolyard emptied, I would find an excuse to linger. Alone in the large classroom, I would cautiously approach the podium, extend my hand, and pull the whiteboard. I only opened the board about 30 centimeters, just enough to see the dark void behind it. I never dared to open it completely, partly out of fear of what might lie deep within, partly due to another invisible fear. Every time I opened it, I heard sounds. At first, it was a soft wooden creak, very faint, like someone stepping onto a stair, very slowly. Just a few steps, then silence. One time, I stood motionless for a full minute, holding my breath, not daring to move a single finger. The sound then echoed again, clack, clack, steadily and clearer, as if someone had just ascended a few steps and stopped, waiting for my reaction. It felt as if an invisible presence was observing me, waiting for a sign, an action from my side. I told this story to my best friend in class, and they just burst out laughing, thinking I was trying to find a way to skip cleanup duty. I tried to get them to pull the board, but it wouldn't slide. I tried again right after, and it slid open easily. At that point, I started to believe that perhaps only I could open this mysterious passageway. It was a feeling that was both special and unsettling. One early November afternoon, the sky was overcast and drizzling. The faint light from outside cast long, distorted shadows across the room. The school was deserted, only the wind whistling through the window cracks and the rustling of leaves could be heard. I stood in front of the board, phone in hand, trembling slightly. For the past few days, the sounds behind the board had become clearer. Sometimes I heard a very faint whisper, very close. Like wind seeping through a crack in the door, but intermittent. This time, when I opened the board, for the first time, I heard nothing. Not a sound, no footsteps, no creaking wood. A terrifying silence. I hesitated. My instinct told me to close the board and run. But curiosity, the haunting memory of the mysterious sounds, urged me on. I raised my phone, shining its flashlight into the dark space. The phone's screen flickered, as if failing to focus. I aimed the light directly at the staircase. And for just half a second, an incredibly brief moment, I saw a dark figure like a person's shadow. Not a whole person, just from the shoulders up, standing motionless on the third step from the bottom. Long hair reaching its shoulders, indistinct as to whether it was male or female, wearing a dark, low-collared shirt. The face was unclear, too blurry in the darkness. But I had a clear feeling that those eyes were looking up at me. Motionless, expressionless, just standing there as if it had been standing there for a very long time, waiting for someone to open this door. I yanked my hand back, the phone fell to the floor, and the light went out. I slammed the board shut, stumbled backward, almost falling off the podium. I didn't pick up my phone immediately. I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, my ears ringing, my whole body cold. The image of that dark figure haunted my mind, clear in every detail despite appearing only for an instant. After that incident, I no longer dared to stay in the classroom alone. I also didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid people wouldn't believe me, but because I was afraid I would believe it myself. Afraid that if I repeated it one more time, whatever was behind the whiteboard would take another step, moving closer to my world. I started observing the classroom more closely. Occasionally, when the teachers were lecturing, I would glance towards the board, wondering if anyone else heard anything, if anyone felt anything unusual. But no one reacted. No one seemed to notice anything strange. All were immersed in their lessons, in their normal world. Until one day. That week, my class had an afternoon tutoring session, but the math teacher was late. The whole class waited, chatting softly. I was sitting near the window, about to pull out my phone when my friend next to me leaned over and whispered, "Hey, can the board slide?" I turned to look at him, my heart suddenly pounding unusually fast. "You saw it?" My voice trembled slightly. He pointed to the edge of the board, where a thin layer of dust bore the faint imprint of my fingers from pushing it open. I just saw some scratches on the side. Thought someone was messing with the board. But there's also a strange smell. It smells like an old, musty room. And also, something sweet. I jumped up. For some reason, a wave of dread washed over me. I didn't want anyone else to know about that passageway, didn't want anyone to try opening it. I hastily blocked the board with the heavy chalk cabinet, then made an excuse to leave class that day, claiming I had a sudden stomach ache. From that day on, I never opened the board again. I tried to forget its existence. But occasionally, during quiet lunch breaks, when the entire hallway was silent, I would still hear a faint clack, clack, very soft, very steady, as if someone was stepping very lightly on those decaying wooden steps behind the wall, the footsteps becoming clearer, closer. After graduating, I returned to the school once, for an anniversary event. I sought out the old classroom block. The classroom was still there, but the whiteboard had been replaced with a modern LCD screen. I asked an old cleaner about the old board. She said, in a flat, even tone, "That board? It was removed a long time ago. And it was strange, when they took it off, behind the wall was just solid cement. No hidden pipes or anything." I nodded. Said nothing more. I wasn't sure if they were telling the truth. Or perhaps, that void only appeared when someone truly looked at it in a certain way, a way that only certain individuals could perceive. Many years have passed now. I'm working, I've moved, I live a normal life, trying not to think about it. But sometimes, when I look at a white wall, I think of the darkness behind the board. A place no one sees but which is waiting for you to look.
If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories.